Prime Minister said repeatedly that he had no knowledge of funds from the dictatorship in Beijing going to federal election candidates. Today we learned that is not true.
Was it ever briefed up out of CSIS? It was not.
Mr. Speaker, I've just been informed by the National Security Advisor that the CSIS Intelligence Assessment of July 20th, 2021 was sent by CSIS to the relevant departments and to the National Security Advisor in the PCO. This contradicts what the Prime Minister said yesterday.
Calls are growing for a nonpartisan public inquiry into China's attempts to interfere with our elections. You used to call yourself transparent by default. Why are you so resistant?
We want open and independent. An open, independent public inquiry to get to the truth and make sure it never happens again.
David Johnston has served this country in many, many different ways through a long and unimpeachable career.
There should not and need not be a separate formal public inquiry.
So we have you with an association to the Trudeau Foundation. We have Mr. Iacobucci, who is associated with the Trudeau Foundation. We have Ms. LeBlanc, who is a lifetime donor and supporter of the Liberal Party, including attending fundraising events with the Prime Minister in recent time. Given all of that, you don't see a conflict of interest?
I am gobsmacked beyond belief to listen to you in the role as President and CEO and a former Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs to suggest you knew nothing.
Special Rapporteur David Johnston has submitted his resignation to the Prime Minister.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour à tous. Over the last number of months, I have held regular discussions with opposition House leaders regarding the creation of a public process which would examine matters related to foreign interference in Canada's elections and democratic institutions. This negotiation, an extent to which we have involved opposition parties throughout the process, is unprecedented. I can share with you the details of these discussions. The Government of Canada, with the support of all recognized parties in the House of Commons, will appoint the Honourable Marie-Josée Hogue, a judge of the Court of Appeal of Quebec, to lead a public inquiry established under the Inquiries Act. Justice Hogue will be tasked with examining and assessing interference by China, Russia, and other foreign states and non-state actors, including any potential impacts, to confirm the integrity of and impacts on the 2019 and 2021 general elections at the national and the electoral district levels.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. It sounds like a public inquiry is finally going to happen 6 months later than it should have happened, but we'll take our victories where we can get them.
Now, we have heard a lot of noise about concerns of Justice Hogue's ties to Trudeau, but you know us. That just inspired us to go digging, and we found some reasons for optimism. Now, before we get started, help us keep this channel growing strong by hitting that like button to help us push this out to more viewers, and subscribe so you're notified of our next episode. If you would like to support the channel, please give us a super thanks by clicking the button right below the video, or buy us a coffee or a pizza via the Buy Us a Coffee link in the description.
So, the table is set, the orchestra is engaged, and it's time to see if Justin Trudeau can actually dance.
The opposition parties and Trudeau have agreed to terms of a public inquiry, the time frame, and who the judge is that will be overseeing it. She has 5 months to submit a preliminary report. That's the end of February 2024. That is quick. She then has until December of 2024 to submit a final report, which will include recommendations for the House to act on. Dominic LeBlanc, the minister that Trudeau passed the buck to on this, sat down with CTV earlier today to talk about the public inquiry. Let's see what he had to say.
For months, Minister, I remember you and many other ministers in your government telling Canadians that an inquiry wasn't necessary because there were other measures and other mechanisms in place to fully investigate the issue of foreign interference. Am I to take from your decision today that you no longer believe that's the case?
We believed in February, Vashi, when we appointed David Johnston, the former Governor General, to review all of these circumstances, to have access to all of the classified information, and to make a public report to Canadians. We thought that that was an important first step in examining this issue in an independent way. As you noted, Mr. Johnston was subject to partisan attacks. He was attacked by the very party that appointed him as Canada's Governor General. And he decided to leave that function in June. The Prime Minister asked me at that point to work with all of the opposition parties on what would be the next steps. A public inquiry was never off the table for the government. Mr. Johnston identified some of the challenges of having a public inquiry in the area of classified intelligence information. But the terms of reference that we worked on with the opposition, and they agreed to unanimously with us, allow for the Commission to function in a way that protects Canada's security information, but also, we think, in a way that can reassure Canadians around the resiliency of our democracy. So we think this was a very important step that we all took together today.
A public inquiry was never off the table. That sounds like BS.
Oh, it's complete BS because they kept saying it over and over and over again.
And not only did Johnston not say like, oh, well, we might have difficulty doing a public inquiry, which, okay, I guess to be fair, he did say that, but that wasn't the sole reason as to why a public inquiry was not recommended. He said that it was not needed, not that it was going to be difficult to do because of the classified information, like not as the sole reason. He did cite that as a reason, but he said that it wasn't necessary after he reviewed the necessary documentation.
Right. And the other piece of this was he's saying, oh, well, he was subject to partisan attacks. He wasn't subject to partisan attacks. These criticisms of David Johnston were legitimate. And it actually has nothing to do with him being appointed to Governor General by Stephen Harper. Stephen Harper appointed him to be Governor General of Canada. That's one thing. And it's not like Stephen Harper appointed him to be Governor General to oversee something that was completely partisan in nature. It's not that hard to understand, everybody. David Johnston, who is a personal friend of the Trudeaus, who was a partner and member of the Pierre Trudeau Foundation, who used the same communications and strategy firm that Han Dong was when he was dealing with his challenges,
relating to the foreign interference,
and was also engaged in business with a liberal strategy firm. So there's all of these pieces here that are leaning to the liberals, while Johnston is investigating possible wrongdoing by the liberals as it relates to the possible collusion with China or indifference to China in helping them get elected.
And there's one major difference here. The first time with Johnston, it was only a liberal appointment. Only the liberals agreed on who was going to be the special rapporteur.
Well, they didn't consult anyone. It was a surprise to everybody when they announced it. Nobody knew but the liberals.
Right. This time, all parties had a say in who was going to be the judge for this.
Right. So, very important.
If it was so important, though, Minister, why does it look like your government was kind of dragged there kicking and screaming by all parties in the opposition?
Well, I've been an opposition MP too, Vashi. I would have predicted that that's exactly what they would have said. I even joked with them when I spoke to them at the end of last week that, of course, at the announcement they would say that. We thought what was important is to lower the very toxic partisan tone around this issue, which we saw in the spring, which attacked, as we said, Mr. Johnston in a way that we thought was unseemly. That's fine. We've now worked with the opposition party in a very collaborative, frankly, and collegial way to arrive at terms of reference for an inquiry, every line of which we agreed to, all of us. And the choice of Justice Hogue of the Quebec Court of Appeal to lead the inquiry was also a unanimous choice of all the recognized parties in the House of Commons. So we think that this should lower the partisan temperature. It should give this important issue to one of Canada's senior justices who will be equipped to examine all of these issues, all of the facts, have access to all of the relevant information, and make recommendations to Canada and to Canadians. So we think this should reassure Canadians about our democratic institutions and, frankly, about the ability of Parliament to work collaboratively on an issue that should be a nonpartisan one, how to ensure that hostile foreign actors don't interfere in Canadian democratic processes.
I love the lecturing going on here.
I love that bold question from that reporter. That was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was. It was. And then LeBlanc saying, oh, well, I've been an opposition MP and I joked with them that that's what they would say. No, you joked with them that that's what they would say because you knew that's exactly what was happening. Like the point that he's trying to make is, oh, well, we were trying to reduce the toxic partisanship and we want Canadians to be able to see that Parliament can work together. Hello? That's what even Jagmeet was saying back in the spring. He was agreeing with Pierre that there should be an independent public inquiry and the person leading that should be agreed to by all the parties. Both of them were saying the same thing. So when Jagmeet and Pierre are saying the same thing, it's probably the right thing to do.
I like how LeBlanc was trying to make it seem like, oh, we were rescuing David Johnston from these partisan attacks. Meanwhile, from our perspective, the northern perspective, it seemed like they just tossed him to the wolves.
Well, and then David Johnston completely surprised them when he said, I'm out. Like, Trudeau was shocked when that happened. He thought David Johnston was just going to take this on the chin for him and Trudeau was going to ride off into the sunset and this would be over. No.
I don't think Trudeau and the cabinet expected it to get to this point. I think, first of all, they thought that they could just kind of brush it away by calling us all racists and whatnot. And then when that didn't happen, they figured, oh, surely with this quote-unquote special rapporteur, we'll be able to brush everybody off and assure Canadians that it's nothing to worry about. And then when we didn't buy that, well, now here we are. And I think just based on their demeanor and what they're saying, I don't think anybody in that cabinet is too happy about what's going on right now.
No, I don't think so.
I think they're hiding something. That's my suspicion. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
We're not there yet. We still have an inquiry to see, and we have a new judge that's going to oversee it. Now, who is this judge, and should we be concerned or optimistic?
The judge in question, as LeBlanc mentioned, is Justice Marie-Josée Hogue. She's been around the block, earned some prestigious honors, and is a current judge in the Quebec court system. But who's she really? We don't want to fall into the same trap that we did with David Johnston.
Well, we have seen some initial reactions from people that are leaning to his perspective of concern. Why is that? That can be attributed primarily by this find by Vesper on Twitter. You see, it turns out that she worked at the same law firm that was home to former Liberal Prime Ministers Jean Chrétien and, yes, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. It also turns out that this firm was involved with defending Justin Trudeau in the West Point Grey Academy case.
Now, just wait a minute. Don't turn off the video and don't start hyperventilating just yet. Stay with us for a moment because there's a lot more to this. Let's start with the premise that Pierre Poilievre and his team are not stupid. Good premise, right? So, if you start with that premise, then you have to wonder what the reason was that they agreed to the selection of this judge.
Well, we found out what that reason was. You see, Justice Hogue was agreed upon by the Conservatives as a sleeper pick for the following reasons. Number one, yes, she was a partner at the same law firm as Chrétien and Pierre Trudeau. But you know who else was?
Former Conservative leader of the opposition, Erin O'Toole. Why is that important? No doubt, working alongside Erin O'Toole, they went for coffee, probably shared a lot of meals and late-night conversations, maybe about politics. This would have had an influence on Justice Hogue, which leads us to reason number 2.
You see, she decided to donate $1,750 to the Conservative Party of Canada over the course of 8 years. Those donations, and no doubt the subsequent networking, caught the attention of Stephen Harper, which leads us to reason number 3.
Stephen Harper was impressed enough by Justice Hogue that he decided to appoint her to be a judge in the first place, which is the position that she holds today. So, while it might look like a gong show from that connection to Trudeau and the Liberals, we think that the Conservatives are giving each other backroom high fives over this appointment because it seems to be somebody that they can actually trust.
See, no reason to hyperventilate, maybe even a reason to have a nice drink of your favorite adult beverage and raise a glass to Pierre and his team. This might be the sleeper pick of the year.